As I mentioned last time, we're on a new reading list that's more logical. So let's get started on some issues that we should already have been reading if we wanted things to make some kind of sense. And we'll start off in outer space. The galaxy has been hit by two disasters, Annihilation and the Phalanx, and left the Nova Corps in rough shape, consisting of, well, Nova, actually. It's a big job for just one dude, but during that, there were a number of old school allies brought in to help out. Star-Lord and Rocket Raccoon, for example, and most of the former members of the Infinity Watch. And Star-Lord comes up with the idea that maybe what they need is a team that can be proactive in stopping threats on this scale, rather than just waiting for them to keep happening and leading to massive galaxy-threatening events. So together with Rocket, the recovering Groot, Drax, Gamora, Mantis, Adam Warlock, and Phyla-Vell, the new Quasar, the group takes up operations from a place called Nowhere. The team doesn't have a name, but after recovering a time-displaced Major Victory, aka Vance Astrovic, and learning that he is a member of a team called the Guardians of the Galaxy, the group decides that it's a great name and get permission to call themselves that in the present. This is very recent history. In fact, as you'll see, Major Victory is still with them, trying to figure things out, as we kick off this part, Issue 4 of Guardians of the Galaxy. They're dealing with the fallout from the fight last time. Major Victory recognizes someone named Starhawk, but his memory is really bad at the moment. So Quill is hoping that maybe the central cortex might be able to figure out how his assailant got there, maybe where from, and perhaps how to stop from further attacks that make the Guardians unwelcome here. Cosmo, a Soviet space-era dog with intelligence and mind powers, is the head of security for Nowhere and very supportive of the team, and intends to help them, but the two are nearly killed when the place explodes, saved only by a timely precognitive warning from Mantis. 38 beings were killed in the explosion, and while that's a concern, what's really worrying is that 3 of the bodies recovered are Skrulls, when there were no Skrulls in there before. They were impersonating somebody else. And at least one of them is a Super Skrull, for the cherry on top. Nobody can tell if there are any more than that, and since someone planted a bomb, paranoia was already high. Gamora, still recovering from severe solar burns last issue, angrily points out even the team isn't guaranteed to be Skrull-proof. They were only just formed after all, and everyone has a reason for mistrust. The other residents agree and show up wanting to know WTF, including the Luminals and their local head, Cynosure. For the sake of peace, the team needs to be locked down, which pisses off Warlock because their work is way too important to stop just because the other occupants of Nowhere have their panties in a twist. It's made even worse because some of the other aliens decide to attack Major Victory, suggesting to the others that he's a problem, by refusing to let strangers stab him for no reason. Things get even worse at the hearing to investigate this, when it's revealed that Drax has made 26 unauthorized visits to the Cortex. And given that his name is the Destroyer, that is worrying. They want to question him to find out if this is innocent or not, but since at that time he's not in his quarters and is arming himself with a very large gun, that does not help his case. This leads us into issue 5. The Luminals are going to be sent to apprehend Drax for questioning, over the objections of Quasar and Quill, who thinks that as his responsibility, it should be down to his team to bring Drax in, who warn that any other options are going to likely wind up with more people being in the hospital, or corpses. Sure enough, 3 meta-powered Luminals head to where Drax is hiding, and he proceeds to beat the living crap out of them, and nonchalantly leaves. To avoid things further spiraling out of control, Quill agrees that his team will be confined for the time being, much to the annoyance of the others. And of course Warlock is off doing his thing because he's Warlock. He figures since these people are so damn obsessed with the Skrull threat they'll risk damage to the cosmos, then he'll find the frickin' Skrulls so he can get back to guarding the galaxy, like it says on the poster. Plus, Quasar went out looking for Drax after Gamora encouraged her, so Quill is pissed at her, and she's pissed that he wouldn't encourage his people to look out for each other like a team should. The Skrulls have done an awesome job of tearing apart the Guardians, and they didn't even do anything. Here to actually tear the team apart is Starhawk again, this time as a woman because Rule 63 applies even to the Marvel Universe. Starhawk is here because the future is getting changed, and it's probably the fault of Major Victory, but also probably the Guardians because that does sound like something they might accidentally do. So she's going to take them all out just to be on the safe side. Speaking of which, Drax has a bomb that he's going to use to sort out the Skrull problem, because Skrulls revert when they're dead. Thus, kill everybody, and the problem sorts itself out. Can't fault that logic. But then again, this is the same guy who was given an Infinity Gem and literally ate it. This is hardly new for Drax. Warlock, meanwhile, has in fact found the Skrulls. They're with Cosmo, who is protecting them. So, here's another fight breaking out, like there weren't enough already. I'm not sure what I was expecting with Guardians of the Galaxy, but this exceeded my expectations so much, I went back and read issues 1 to 3 too. The issues of how dysfunctional this team is alongside their successes, despite this fact, is really enjoyable, and its integration into the Secret Invasion is proving an interesting take. It's like the discovery of Elektra's corpse, only instead of sowing mistrust amongst everyone, it creates mistrust specifically towards the Guardians. I'm interested in seeing how this particular storyline develops, and, not to keep ragging on it, but unlike Captain Britain and MI-13, my passing involvement with this series is likely going to lead to me reading the entire thing. Even with a major fight in issue 5, there was still a lot of story to it, which fits in with one commonality of this particular video. The issues don't feel incomplete or uninterested in the present, the way that the other core books seem. I don't want to hate on Bendis, but much like in Age of Ultron, I'm getting a sense that other people should be writing the core books, and he should be handling the peripheral stories instead of the other way around. From here we go to Nova himself, starting with issue 16. The last of the Nova Corps was already a lot of pressure on our hero. But what's worse is that he had access to the World Mind computer, and during a fight with Galactus, the kind of confrontation that you should really try to avoid, the World Mind went offline. So now Nova has to handle this crap all by his lonesome. So he's out doing his interstellar hero thing, answering a distress call, finding a massacre, and just one survivor, along with a bunch of kitten aliens. They're all desperately hiding in a cave. But the survivor is not a survivor for very long, so Nova desperately tries to save him, only for the dying botanist to turn into sand. That's a weird one, even for aliens. But it's not because he's dead, it's because he's a super Skrull, as are all these little kittens. This was all a trap to bring Nova here so that he can be eliminated. They don't want him interfering with their invasion plans. But one of their numbers actually Kl'rt, the original super Skrull, and he does not approve of this. He attacks his fellow Skrulls and together with Nova kick their collective asses, even their ship when it arrives. Although even Kl'rt is a little surprised that Nova would do something like that solo. Even he knows better than try that, and Kl'rt's done some pretty stupid things over the years. He's betrayed his people because he's participated in the two big conflicts that led to the Guardians forming, which changed his perspective on things. He doesn't approve of this misguided crusade, and it doesn't help that they regard him as a bygone relic. That's a kick to an ego that's been bruised a lot over the years. So he wants to hitch a ride to Earth, where his estranged daughter is, but upon arriving, when the patrol spots them, Kl'rt turns on Nova. Dick. This brings us to issue 17, where Kl'rt demands a place in this invasion and burns Nova to atoms in front of all of them to prove his bona fides. But don't worry, he hasn't betrayed Nova. Instead, he's wrapped him in a force field and then turned Nova invisible, so it just looks like he did until the Skrulls all left, leaving Nova free to head down to Earth and check up on his parents. They've been watching the Skrull announcement on television about how you better obey the new overlords and all that, but right now, the immediate worry is Rob, his brother, who works on a secret project called Project Pegasus. And there's reason to be concerned, because when Nova arrives, there are corpses, some human and some Skrull. This place was invaded. That kind of thing puts a body on edge, so Nova is attacked by Darkhawk, who is actually a member of the New Warriors with him. Naturally, they all assume that he's a Skrull. It takes his brother questioning him to confirm that Nova is the real deal. The reason the Skrulls attacked was that the project makes and works with lots of high-tech stuff. That's why this attack is worrisome. That plus the fact that there's more than 100 people here, plus the daycare. For the workers, I mean. No parent really wants to go to Dr. Chaos's high-energy research lab and daycare. They locked everything down to keep it out of Skrull hands, but it keeps it out of their hands, too. The only device available is one that was being examined when the attack happened. But it needs a supercomputer to try to get it working, and the Skrull incursions are kind of making that hard. But Nova is taken to a quantum flask containing energy from the negative zone, from not too long ago actually, and thanks to an exam they locate the world mind inside of Nova, and thanks to that release the quantum flask stuff, only it's Quasar. The previous one, not the one who's with the Guardians right now. This is surprising because Quasar was previously killed, but then this is the Marvel Universe where that kind of thing is expected. So, yeah, he's back. That's good. Or bad. Considering that Captain Marvel had the same thing happen, and it was just that he was a Skrull, so I guess we're going to need to check issue 18. Now, as you might notice, there's a slightly different timbre to my voice at this moment. That's because this is Future Chuck stepping in to tell you I had a whole tangent in here about how this book tied into Death's Head 2, and a bunch of other things. I've decided to just remove that for right now. Why? Couple of reasons. One, stuff has changed since I last did this and realized that I would have to just come in here and correct everything. Two, I realized that this really deserved a more in-depth discussion than this. Further compounding it is that a lot of this stuff is not available through Marvel Unlimited, which I normally use in order to get access to comics for these reviews, and that's a real problem. I don't particularly feel like breaking out my old boxes and getting out the scanner to do each of these things, and I'm not really in the mood to go digging around and getting a virus or something looking for some free online comic right now. So for right now, let's just go on with this event here, and sometime down the line I will probably turn to give Death's Head his due, because damn it, he deserves it. Worldmind says that they're 14 minutes away from the total human extermination in this facility, so Nova and Quasar leap back into the fray. Of course, the middle of the fight is a great opportunity to fill in background information, so they explain in between punching Skrulls in the face about the war with Annihilus and all of that. Quasar clearly dying, and now he's made of energy, I guess. So that must be how he's able to pull off his next trick, frying all of the Skrulls in the room with a big explosion, but then losing his corporealness in the process. For the moment, he has to head back to the quantum flask to take a nap or something. So, now is the time when Worldmind is able to activate and power up the minion army in order to battle the Skrulls. And together with Nova, Darkhawk, and the rest, they force the Skrulls to withdraw. But it's a strategic withdrawal. If they can't have Project Pegasus, the Skrulls will destroy it. Sore losers. They bring in a big old ship to do it, but suddenly, the ship explodes. Turns out there are a bunch more Novas that have been created, and they blew it up. Right neighborly of them, if confusing, since Nova is the last of the Nova Corps. I've never had any interest in the character of Nova. I didn't pick up New Warriors back in the day, and had a little interest in getting into the character. Yet despite that, this is a very solid story arc, and I'm not even counting the not-so-subtle nod to Mark Grunwald here. Nova's involvement is completely believable, helps advance a different subplot, that of Kl'rt, and uses the event to advance the book's own storyline, the return of Worldmind, Quasar, and the first of the new Nova Corps. These events are integral to the storyline. It's not that the Skrulls are just a speed bump in the course of the story, they're a necessary impetus for something that wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for their threat. Much like with Guardians of the Galaxy, which these two writers also work on, the story is using the event as a means of moving forward rather than simply an interruption in established plans. Our final two issues for this outing are New Warriors, issues 14 and 15. Like I said, I'd never had much interest in the New Warriors in their original run, although I did feel the deaths of some of their members, and the transformation of Speedball into Penance was rather mean-spirited. Their actions kicked off the Civil War event, so we have to thank them for that as well. So, the New Warriors is not the old New Warriors, which I guess would fit the name. At the moment, they including Jubilee, who was depowered during the decimation and thus uses a powered suit to be heroic. Man, there was a lot of background to talk about with this. Anyway, the new warriors are reflecting on how the new Night Thrasher, brother to the old one, is a bit of an asshole. They don't know that he's the brother. That's probably what makes this a little confusing for them. Speaking of confusing, aliens invade from the sky. The Skrulls have shown up, and the new warriors have to head back home to suit up, because there's going to be some fighting. You don't become a superhero and then watch an alien invasion on television. But Night Thrasher reacts to this with a new thought. What if the new warriors were framed? What if it was one or more Skrulls who orchestrated the event, impersonating some or all of those present to cause all the problems that came with the Registration Act? That would mean that his brother might still be alive and vindicated. So while the rest is all fired up to kick some green buttocks around, Night Thrasher tells them to stay put while he checks on something. Then he flies off in their plane, so they suit up and follow him, only to get ambushed by one of the Super Skrulls. Now, this team is not exactly the Avengers, so one Super Skrull ambush is serious. But eventually, shrinking gas and a well-placed boot sort out that problem. Meanwhile, Night Thrasher arrives at his brother's old cabin. The place is empty, but he gets a DNA sample, only to find a bunch of the old new warriors are outside, led by Vance Astrovic. Now, didn't I say Vance Astrovic is a member of the Guardians of the Galaxy called Major Victory? Yes, I did. That is Vance Astrovic from an alternate future. This is the one in the present, whose powers were unlocked when his future self showed up, and was a member of the New Warriors under the name of Marvel Boy, which is now Justice because he realized that Marvel Boy does not strike fear into the hearts of villains. The Guardians of the Galaxy, incidentally, are honorary Avengers because of the work that they do in the future, which makes Vance Astrovic unique. He is the only hero who appears on the Avengers roster twice. But anyway, Justice knows that the real Night Thrasher wouldn't do what this one is doing. And when this one won't explain himself, concludes he must be a fake, which he is, and that means he's a Skrull, which he isn't. But fat lot of good that's going to do him. So a fight starts, and that's when the new warriors show up, leading us to issue 15. It's old versus new, and Night Thrasher realizes that that is a problem. So he decides to put a stop to all this crap by unmasking himself, revealing who he really is. He explains the same thing that I thought at the time. What happened at Stanford did not seem in character for Night Thrasher, and he wants to get to the bottom of things. Once he's explained that, Justice says that he knows where to check and they can make sure. So they all pile into the jet to go and see, only their destination is a helicarrier, and naturally the Skrulls are fighting it, forcing the old new warriors and the new warriors to show why they're called warriors, and kick the stuffing out of them. Appropriately, one of the Super Skrulls has the power of Nova, but together they manage to put it down, and Night Thrasher and Justice are able to check. There is no body for Night Thrasher. There was no trace of him left afterwards, just a small sample here, but there is DNA on it, enough for comparison, and it's him. Same with Microbe and Namorita. So with the fight done, they all visit a memorial to the three of them, fences are mended, and all of that, the end. New Warriors continues the theme that we have had with these issues. The Skrull invasion is used to advance something that wouldn't have happened otherwise. Night Thrasher revealing his identity and definitively proving the three Fallen were the real deal. The Skrulls unintentionally created a situation where these things could finally happen. Maybe they could have happened in some other way, but here and now, they did happen solely because of this crossover. And it's a great example, again, of how a tie-in can work well, using the event to help advance the books in their direction instead of, one more weird thing happened to me today, as usually happens with these. While the New Warriors storyline was the weakest for me of the three books, it still was done pretty well. This kind of stuff is making me reconsider Secret Invasion, actually, which has started to seem frankly a bit masturbatory in its approach. What's more, these stories also don't have the problem that I've seen elsewhere, the books being obsessed with either the past or was setting up some future event. They're in the here and now, and that's a breath of fresh air during this event.